What the hell is going on here? Rex's voice cut through the silence like a knife. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Damon knew that whatever happened next would set the course for the Rough Riders, and for himself. Would Rex side with tradition, or would he see the truth in what Damon and Marcus were fighting for? Would the Rough Riders finally leave behind the ghosts of the past and unite for something better? Or would they remain shackled to a toxic legacy that threatened to tear them apart? Damon stood there, heart pounding, knowing that the road ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear, he wasn't backing down. The battle had just begun. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. The silence in the room after Rex's arrival felt like it stretched for miles. Damon stood frozen, his mind racing, his heart thudding in his chest. The weight of the moment was suffocating, but in the depths of his thoughts, there was no hesitation. He had fought too hard to be here, to be seen as an equal. His pride and his belief in something better than the hate that lingered in the club made him stand firm. But Rex, the president of the Rough Riders, was a man whose reputation was built on power and control. No one dared to challenge his authority, and Damon knew that his words had to carry the strength of conviction if he was going to make any headway. Rex's piercing gaze scanned the room, moving from Damon to Jake, then to Marcus. The tension in the room was palpable, and everyone was waiting for Rex to make his move. The president was a man who didn't waste time with pleasantries. He didn't ask questions he wasn't prepared to hear the answers to. And right now, it was clear that the club was on the brink of something far bigger than just a disagreement over one member. Rex had seen a lot in his time with the Rough Riders. He'd fought in wars, both on the streets and within the club, and his experience had shaped him into the hardened leader he was today. The Rough Riders had been built on blood, sweat, and loyalty, but somewhere along the way, something had gone wrong. The unity they once shared had begun to splinter, and Damon was right at the center of it. He wasn't just challenging the status quo. He was challenging a culture that had existed for years, a culture that wasn't going to change without a fight. So, what's this all about? Rex finally spoke, his voice low, steady, and filled with authority. Jake, Marcus, what's going on here? Jake didn't hesitate. He stood tall, puffing his chest out, his fists clenched at his sides. His voice dripped with disdain as he spoke. This isn't about Damon, Rex. This is about the future of the Rough Riders. We can't just let anyone waltz in here and change everything. He doesn't belong here. This club has always been a place for those who've proven themselves, who understand what it means to ride with loyalty. Damon's not one of us. The words hit like a slap to Damon's face, but he didn't flinch. He had heard it all before. His whole life, he'd been forced to fight for the respect that others took for granted. It was nothing new to him. But it wasn't just Jake's hate that stung. It was the realization that a part of the club he had once called home might never accept him for who he was, no matter how much he proved himself. Marcus, who had been standing quietly beside Damon, finally spoke up, his voice calm but firm. This isn't about loyalty, Jake. It's about what we stand for as a club. We ride together. We live by a code. But that code can't be about keeping people out. If we keep turning our backs on people who want to ride with us, who deserve to be here, then we're not the Rough Riders anymore. We're just a bunch of old men clinging to the past. Is that what we've become? Marcus's words struck a chord with some of the others in the room. A few of the older members shifted uncomfortably, their eyes flicking between Jake and Marcus. Damon could feel the room's energy shift, but it was fragile. One wrong word, one wrong move, and the club could be torn apart for good. Rex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked slowly across the room, his boots heavy on the concrete floor. The Rough Riders had always looked to him for leadership, but Damon could sense that Rex was at a crossroads. He was torn between the tradition of the club and the reality of the world they were living in now. A world where the lines between right and wrong weren't so easy to define. When Rex finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more measured. I've seen what happens when a club lets hatred fester. It destroys everything. But I also know that change isn't easy. It's messy, it's ugly, and sometimes it comes with a cost. Damon's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at Rex. The president was talking about change, but it felt like the club was too far gone to fix. The longer Damon stood there, the more he felt like he was losing the fight before it had even begun. But something inside him refused to give up. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to let a few old-timers stand in the way of his vision for the future. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," Damon said, his voice steady but with an edge. "I came here because I believe in what the Rough Riders used to stand for. I believe in brotherhood. But I'm not going to stand by while we tear each other apart over something that shouldn't even be an issue. I'm not leaving. If I have to fight for my place here, then so be it." Rex didn't reply right away, but Damon could see the struggle in his eyes. Rex was a man who valued loyalty above all else, and Damon had given everything to prove his loyalty. But loyalty didn't always mean agreeing with the status quo. Sometimes, it meant standing up and challenging the very things that held the club back. The room was quiet for a long moment, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for Rex's decision. Damon could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, and it felt like time had stopped. He had put everything on the line, his reputation, his place in the club, his friendships, and now it was up to Rex to decide which way this was going to go. Finally, Rex spoke, but his words weren't what Damon had expected. "I didn't build this club to watch it burn," Rex said slowly, his eyes fixed on Damon. "But I didn't build it to watch it turn into something it's not either. You got guts, Damon. I'll give you that, but this isn't just your fight. This is everyone's fight." And just like that, the room erupted into chaos. Some of the members were shouting in agreement with Rex, while others were furious that he was even considering Damon's side. Jake's face turned red with anger, and he slammed his fist against the wall. "You're making a huge mistake, Rex," Jake snarled. "You let him in, and you'll destroy everything we've worked for." Damon knew that the battle was far from over. But as the shouting grew louder and the tension reached its peak, he couldn't help but wonder, was Rex truly ready to make a change, or was this all just talk? The story was far from finished, and every moment felt like it was pushing towards something bigger, something that would define the future of the Rough Riders. Would they unite or fracture beyond repair? Stay tuned. The real fight is just getting started. The shouting in the room reached a fever pitch, and it seemed like the very walls of the clubhouse might collapse under the weight of the anger. Damon stood there, holding his ground, his eyes locked on Rex, but his mind was a whirlwind. Jake's outbursts were deafening, and the rest of the club seemed to be splitting down the middle. Some were visibly supporting Damon, while others were closing ranks behind Jake, unwilling to accept what was unfolding before them. The moment felt like it could explode at any second. Rex, the president, stood silent amidst the chaos. His face, usually unreadable, was now a mask of conflict. The pressure of the situation was wearing on him, and Damon could see the strain in his eyes. Rex wasn't the kind of man to make decisions in the heat of the moment. He always calculated, always thought ahead. But this time, the decision was monumental, and it wasn't just about one man. It was about the soul of the Rough Riders, about what they stood for, and whether they would move forward or fall apart. Finally, Rex raised his hand, his voice booming through the room. "Enough." The sound of his command cut through the noise, and everyone fell silent, eyes fixed on him. The tension was thick, suffocating even, but there was no turning back now. I've seen what happens when a club gets too caught up in division. It loses what it's about. We fought side by side for years, and some of you think that one person, one man, can tear all that down. It's not about race. It's not about where you come from. It's about what you stand for. Rex turned to face Damon, his expression hardening. "You've stood by this club, Damon. You've earned your place, even if it's been hard for some to see that. But this goes beyond just you. If we let hate divide us, then what's the point of all this? Of everything we've built?" Damon's breath caught in his throat. Was this the moment he had been waiting for? Was Rex truly ready to make the change, to stand against the hatred that had poisoned the Rough Riders for so long? "You're right," Rex continued, his voice steady now, but with the weight of finality. "This isn't just about you, Damon. It's about all of us. And if we're not strong enough to accept our own, then we're not a brotherhood anymore. We're just a gang with a patch on our backs." The room went still. Damon's heart raced as he processed what Rex had just said. For the first time, it felt like the club's old wounds were finally being addressed. Like they were on the verge of something real, something that could heal the cracks that had formed over the years. Jake's face twisted in fury. His fists clenched at his sides. "You can't be serious, Rex. This is going to tear us apart." Rex didn't flinch. "If we don't change, then maybe we should be torn apart. We can't keep going down this path. This club stands for freedom, for unity, for loyalty. If we forget that, we forget what it means to be a Rough Rider." The tension was still palpable, but it was different now. There was an air of inevitability, as if everyone in the room knew that the old ways were coming to an end. The question now was whether they could move forward or whether they would let their past destroy them. Damon took a step forward, his voice unwavering. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for what's right. I'm asking for a chance to show you all that we can be better. A chance to prove that we're stronger than this hate." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, members of the club began to nod. Some reluctantly, others with a sense of quiet acceptance. It was as if a dam had broken. The walls that had been built between them started to crumble, brick by brick. Marcus stepped up beside Damon, his face resolute. "We've been through too much together to let this destroy us. We ride as one, or we don't ride at all." And just like that, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was a start. Damon could see the change taking root, even if it was only a seed. The club wasn't going to suddenly become a utopia overnight. But for the first time, it felt like there was hope for something better. Jake, still fuming, turned and stormed out of the room, unable to accept the shift in power. But his departure was telling. For the first time, the Rough Riders had made a decision based on unity, not division. The future was uncertain, but for Damon, it was worth the fight. The room began to fill with murmurs of agreement, and a sense of relief washed over Damon. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. They hadn't just talked about change, they had started living it. The Rough Riders had taken their first real step toward becoming a club that welcomed everyone, regardless of race or background. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. As Damon looked around the room, he felt the weight of what had just happened sink in. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone in that room, everyone who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. This was the beginning of a new chapter. The Rough Riders were no longer a club divided by hate. They were a club that had chosen to rise above it. And as Damon walked out into the night, the roar of his bike's engine felt like a victory. It wasn't just the road ahead that mattered. It was the ride itself. The freedom, the brotherhood, the belief that change was possible, even in the darkest of places. The Rough Riders were still alive, and they had just proved that no matter how deep the division, they could heal, rebuild, and ride together. For Damon, the fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like they were heading in the right direction. The road was long, but he knew one thing for sure. It was a road worth riding.